Section 7.1 Interactive Assignment Objective 3. We want to determine whether the following graph can represent a normal density function. So here's our graph. Before we look at this graph, let's look at some other graphs. Okay? So now a graph could represent a normal density function if it is symmetric about its mean, it has a single peak at the mean, the highest point occurs at the mean, and if it approaches but does not reach the horizontal axis as x increases without bound and decreases without bound. The function on the graph should take only positive values. If we look at this first graph over here, we're going to notice that this graph is not symmetric about its mean because this one is skewed right. So therefore, this graph does not represent a normal density function. Okay, let's take a look at the next one here. This one here to the left here. Okay, this graph is not symmetric about its mean because it is skewed left. And so therefore, this graph does not represent a normal density function. If we look at this next graph here, okay, this graph is not symmetric about its mean because it is not always greater than or equal to 0, because you can see here that the graph goes below the x-axis. So therefore, this graph does not represent a normal density function. Now, when we look at the last one, this is what our question was asking. Okay, well, the graph is symmetric about its mean because if you put a line down the middle, you can fold the page, okay, and it's equal to each other. The graph has a single peak, just like the other ones. Okay, the highest point occurs at the mean, and the graph is always greater than or equal to 0. So therefore, this graph does represent a normal density function. So for our example, we're going to say yes, because the example that was given in this case represents a normal density function.